everyone, it's Taylor here today, and I'd like to share with you how I created these 3 cards using our Flip the Snowflake stamp set. The idea behind this stamp set is that you would use the long border stamp included in the set to create these unique arrangements simply by flipping the cardstock around 180 degrees in your MISTI. We'll also be using the Flip the Snowflake die that cuts around the edge. It also includes 2 individual snowflake dies to match the snowflakes in the stamp set. I'll be doing a little bit of blender brushing with gumball ink and blueberry ink. And then for the stamping portion, I'll be using mini ink cubes in gumball, blueberry, and saltwater taffy. We'll also be doing a little bit of embossing on these cards, so I have my Versamark ink pad along with my silver embossing powder, and I'll be conditioning my cardstock with the powder tool before we stamp with the embossing ink. I'll also be using some of these pretty sparkly things. I keep these in my dish for easy use with my Embellie Gellie. I have that already out on the stick, and I'll show you that later in the video, how I use that tool to pick and place those small embellishments. So let's get started on the project. I have my MISTI here and that long border stamp. I have my cardstock pre-cut, and I'm going to use a pencil to mark the edges of that piece of cardstock so that when I flip it around, after I stamp the first layer, I know exactly that I'm going in the same place. That's how you're going to keep a very symmetrical looking background for your card. So I'm inking first with the lighter color and then going progressively darker with the gumball and finishing with the blueberry. By going light to dark, that keeps your light pad from getting contaminated. Now I've wiped my stamp and flipped my cardstock 180 degrees, and I'll continue inking in the same pattern, light to dark, and then I can stamp that second piece down, and you can see that frame that's created in the middle. That is going to create the perfect spot for our sentiment. So I'm going to do that a few more times, and then next we're going to set it up diagonally. So I have my cardstock in the same place, doing my inking and stamping that first stamp. Now I flip 180 degrees and go ahead and ink again, and you can see the opening in the center is diagonal. Now we're going to do the same with a horizontal piece. This time we need to mark new markings on the edges and lay that stamp horizontally up towards the top of the paper. Inking in our light to dark, and you will see how pretty that turns out when we flip that 180 degrees, inking again, and you have a wonderful frame left in the center. Now I did several of these because I had them set up and I didn't want to waste my MISTI, so I went ahead and stamped several of them, and you can see how those look here in a vertical, a diagonal, and a horizontal look. Now I'm going to take the coordinating die and cut the edges of those off. It takes just a little bit of time to line those up, but as long as you make sure that the snowflake is perfectly aligned inside that die edge all the way across, you will get a perfect cut on those edges. You can see how that looks, and I'm going to finish that with the rest of my die cut pieces until I have all of those borders cut. Now we're going to use our sentiments. I'll be using Thanks Snow Much, Season's Greetings, and the Snowflakes Are Winter's Butterflies. So this first one with the diagonal is a little bit easier to do with an acrylic block because I can see that my grid line is straight as I'm stamping that, as opposed to the MISTI where the grid lines don't travel diagonally, so it's hard to tell if you have your sentiments straight. So I'm going to stamp and emboss all of those sentiments. I have the Thanks Snow Much, the Season's Greetings, and the Snowflakes Are Winter's Butterflies. You can see how pretty those turned out with the silver embossing powder. But I'm not done yet. I want to do a little bit of blender brushing along the top and bottom edges of that die cut piece. I like the dimension that it adds to this project, and so I just start with a little bit of the lighter ink, and then I come in with that darker blueberry color. As you can see, I'm not adding color to the entire card base. I'm simply adding blended color towards the top and the bottom where that snowflake border is going to overlap. So I'll start again with the lighter gumball color over the sprinkles card base and then add in some of the darker blueberry. I think you can see what a nice bit of dimension that gives to the card base when you can see a little bit of blended color at the top and bottom of each card. After finishing all of the different layouts, it's time to add some sparkle. I've brought my rhinestones back with my Embellie Gellie, which is just a little bit of kind of a gummy substance that I put on the end of a stick. I'm adding little glue dots, and I will take my stick then and pick up each gem with the Embellie Gellie and place it onto the dots of glue that I've left. It's really quite easy and simple to do these all at one time, and this adds such a pretty sparkle to these cards. The final step to finishing these projects is going to be adding the foam tape to the back of each layout that we've designed and then popping that up over the card base. I like that little extra bit of dimension that gives to the card. And now we're finished. On the right side, I have the vertical layout, in the center, the diagonal, and on the left, the horizontal. There are so many different ways you can use this Flip the Snowflake stamp set, so I hope you will give it a try in your craft room. You can find all of these products at the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com.